As the International Space Station nears retirement, Axiom Space is building its own commercial space station. And with it, the space company is opening up a new frontier for private sector science in orbit, enabling firms from around the world to run experiments in microgravity that would be impossible on Earth. Well, Dr. Lucy Lowe, Axiom Space's newly appointed Chief Science Officer, is shaping this next chapter. She's a neuroscientist and former NIH program director, and she's now guiding the company's scientific vision. And today we want to see how she sees the future. Hi, Dr. Lowe. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, Linda. Lovely to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Well, as Axiom Space's new science officer, what drew you to this role, and how does your background shape your vision?
Honestly, I was drawn to this role because it sounded really fun. So everything I have done throughout my career, I've followed because I've been interested in it and because it's been fun. And so in terms of opening up opportunities for a new era of science in space and new opportunities for science in space, when I first learned about that through the work I was doing at NIH, I was blown away. And I thought, this is incredible. How is this even happening? And what exciting opportunities there are here. So I was following the space industry while I was at NIH, and I thought, oh, this sounds really fun. So I started talking to some colleagues in the space industry and then joined Axiom just over 3 years ago.
So what makes this moment in space science so exciting for you?
Yeah, it is a really exciting time for the space industry in general, but particularly for space science, because we are transitioning from a traditional government-led, government-funded access to low Earth orbit to opening out opportunities for access to new countries, new researchers, new types of science that have not before been as feasible. So I think there's been an understanding of what the opportunity is for doing research in microgravity for a very long time. But now we're finally at that inflection point where commercial companies can actually come in, and because of the way that commercial companies function, they can throw open the doors for access essentially to researchers, to companies, to academics, to scientists around the world that really want to get into space so that they can provide proof of concept for an idea they have. They can use microgravity as a tool to take it out of the equation of some kind of fluid dynamic system that they're looking at, for example, and uncover some new insights about what that might be. They can use microgravity to do technology demonstrations, to develop technologies that could be used on future exploration missions, or potentially be used back down here on Earth. One of the things that Axiom is very focused on is doing the things in space that benefit life back down here on Earth. So there's just this tremendous opportunity now for anyone to be able to get access to space through Axiom Space and through other companies providing access to the low Earth orbit environment and beyond. And so it's really just an exciting time to go, okay, well, now we've got the opportunity to try some new things, to iterate on what we've learned, but bring new technologies that have evolved over the last 20 or 30 years and actually start implementing them in space and really throw open those doors for innovation and for opportunity.
Well, can you give us some examples what kind of experiments you can do, and what difference it would make doing it in microgravity?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that I always conceptualize it is talk about look at the things that microgravity does, and then when you take it out the equation, it uncovers all kinds of new ways that fundamental forces interact that you just cannot see down here on Earth. So when you think about how molecules, how atoms, how cells interact, that all changes in microgravity in ways that we're still sort of learning to understand. And that gives us an opportunity to learn more insight into very fundamental physics, chemistry, biology, but also applied systems biology, applied technology demonstrations, all of those kinds of things, because there's just it's this really weird and unique environment that just fundamentally changes the fundamental physical forces that govern everything that underpins everything about ourselves, our planet, our lives, our technology, our universe. So doing things in microgravity just gives us this new opportunity to uncover novel molecular mechanisms, for example, in how cells interact with each other, or how cancers form, or how molecules interact with each other. That gives us insight into how proteins might form, that helps us understand more about ourselves and how we grow and develop, but also how we might be able to develop new kinds of therapeutics. So there's just this tremendous kind of smorgasbord of opportunities that doing research in microgravity affords. And it's almost a multitude of riches, is that you have to then try and figure out, okay, where's the real excitement, where's the real opportunity to uncover something new and meaningful that we can translate into clinical or healthcare or a scientific or industrial benefit back here on Earth, or something that offers a new path towards commercialization because you're doing it in space. So there's lots and lots of different opportunities to try and work through, and I think that's what's tremendously exciting right now.
Well, take us through the steps. Is it a company that approaches you or a country?
It's both. It's researchers, it's country officials, government officials that want to understand the opportunities for research in space. A lot of it is very driven by grassroots, by the scientists around the world, because they know and they understand what the opportunities are for doing things in space, and they want to try and exploit that. So often they might need governmental support, for example, to do that. But we have companies coming and talking to us. We do a lot of outreach as well. We know that people don't necessarily understand what the opportunities for microgravity might be. A lot of companies have never even thought about that, and I'm sure traditionally a lot of companies think that why would you do that in space? That's crazy. What's the benefit? What's the opportunity for doing it in space, and why would it be worth the investment to spend the money to do it? And so it's there's a lot of education that Axiom does as well to help people understand where those benefits lie, how they might be exploited, and how we can then actually implement research on orbit that can answer really important and significant scientific questions.
Well, what breakthrough are you hoping to make?
Well, there's so many things that I'm excited about. So some of the research that we've been partnering with some really outstanding organizations to date, we've been looking at stem cell differentiation in space. So stem cells hold enormous opportunity for benefit for people back down here on Earth, whether that's for regenerative medicine, maybe potentially growing bits of organs or types of tissues that could be used for regenerative medicine efforts, or whether it's to develop disease models that can actually replicate different aspects of human diseases that can be modeled, and so we can understand more about those diseases. But to do all of these things, you need to be able to grow stem cells at bulk. And doing that on Earth is very expensive. And very time consuming. And there are ways, or there are opportunities to do it in space that might increase the yield. It might increase the speed at which these stem cells could be grown. And so what we're doing is we're working with fantastic partners at Cedars-Sinai that have been getting some NASA funding to do some research to try and figure out, okay, let's do these proof of concept studies to figure out, is there a use case for doing this in space, and what might that be? And what's the roadmap of research that we need to do to get there? And Axiom's super excited about being involved in this work because we see that the Axiom station and the Axiom infrastructure that we're building would be the place that then we can manufacture those stem cells at scale in future, or potentially even on free-flying foundries for production of stem cells at a huge scale that can be brought back down here to Earth for use back here on Earth. We've also been looking at the production of semiconductor materials. So semiconductors are an incredibly important technology that literally underpin pretty much everything that we use that's technologically advanced here on Earth. And manufacturing of particular components of semiconductor crystals or particular seed crystals that can grow semiconductor wafers can actually be more productive in space. It can generate materials that are more perfect in their crystal structure and that have fewer defects. And what that translates into is a direct improvement in the function of these semiconductor wafers that can translate again into increased processing power, increased computational speed, all kinds of things. There's just no way that we can do that kind of research to figure out where's that use case, where's that killer app. There's no way we can do that on Earth, so we have to do it in space and then figure out if there's a path to at-scale manufacturing. So that's tremendously exciting. We've also been working with partners at UCSD, University of California, San Diego, and the Sanford Stem Cell Institute, looking at cancer research. And different types of cancers seem to grow more quickly in space. And this gives us a remarkable opportunity to accelerate the disease modeling pathology that we can use to understand more about how these diseases form. Maybe we can uncover novel molecular mechanisms that kick off earlier, that give us novel druggable targets, new places for drug companies to look at treatments. Or maybe we can just understand more about different kinds of treatments by using them in space. And so some of the work that we've been doing with UCSD has actually been looking at how cancers grow more quickly in space. But then what's truly exciting is that the team has actually brought forth a couple of drugs that they've been testing in these cancer cells in space, these cancer organoids, kind of balls of cells that replicate certain aspects of the disease physiology. And then when you do it in space, what they're actually seeing is it's more effective in space. And so they're getting results about the drugs that they're testing that is actually translating into data that they're able to put into packages that are going to the FDA that are being used to move towards approval of these drugs, which means that what we're able to start doing is actually generating directly clinically relevant data from research that's being done in space that can speed up the process of drug development and drug approvals back here on Earth.
Well, they all sound so exciting and, so advanced. And what about the space station? Because you're also working on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So all of this science needs to be done on platforms that can support research. So there's lots of different kinds of platforms that can support research, but Axiom is building a space station. We're building the successor to the International Space Station, and it's going to be a place that humans are going to be living and working in space to do the research that not only helps us understand all that fundamental science I told you about, but also helps do those proof of concept and pilot scale and eventually at scale manufacturing of all of those products I told you about, semiconductors, stem cells, cancer, organoids, different kinds of disease models, whatever it is. And you need lab equipment to do that. So Axiom is designing a space station that will house lab equipment that can support this research, whether it's fundamental, applied, or the kinds of capabilities that are needed to support advanced technology demonstrations that many countries, including the US, will use for their exploration missions. So research that is done, R&D essentially, that's done to validate technologies that are going to be used on the Artemis missions, or that might be used on future missions to Mars, or that might be software, for example, that might be tested within a system that then might be put on a satellite and shot out to some distant star further on down the line. I mean, the opportunities for developing and validating things in low Earth orbit that can be used to go further afield is truly a really important aspect that Axiom recognizes. So we see ourselves as a really advanced capability for enabling transformative science that is going to open up doors for new opportunities, not only back here on Earth, but also as we look out towards the solar system and beyond.
Well, when you see the astronauts returning, the effect of microgravity on human bodies, what kind of progress is there being made that you can actually eventually have somebody for longer periods in space?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when the human body enters microgravity, there are so many physiological changes that start taking place really quickly. Muscle mass is lost, bone density is lost, the fluids in the body shift, which causes additional pressure on the cardiovascular system. Now, one thing that's fascinating is that all of those changes are directly clinically relevant to different disease states here on Earth. Many of them age-related. So muscle mass loss is related to sarcopenia, which is age-related muscle loss. Lack of bone density is osteoporosis. Cardiovascular disease, kind of a problem back down here on Earth. So when we look at how crews adapt to spaceflight, we can understand a bit more about our bodies and adaptation to extreme environments that can then offer opportunities for different kinds of disease mitigation or potential disease treatments in future. But we're also then looking at developing countermeasures that can support humans in space for longer periods of times, which is where your kind of question gets to. And so a lot of organizations that want to support human flight in space, human space flight, they know that they need to keep humans healthy and functioning physically as well as mentally in space. So there is lots of research taking place that's funded by different space agencies around the world and certainly supported by Axiom as we develop our station on things like how can exercise countermeasures prevent or reduce some of those physiological changes that might take place when the body enters microgravity. How can we monitor each individual's differential response to their adaptation to microgravity? Because that gives us opportunities to say, okay, well, one person has the specific genetics that mean that they lose 10% of their bone density in a month's time. But this other person has a different type of genetic molecular makeup that means that they only lose 2% of their bone density. What's the difference there, and how can we maybe give the person who's more at risk from more deleterious changes? Maybe there are drugs or countermeasures that we can develop that will specifically support humans. And so, there's a lot of really important research that's being done on essentially personalized medicine, precision medicine that can support humans in space over longer periods of time, that is tailored to each specific individual physiological specimen, each human, because everyone responds differently. But understanding the commonalities helps us translate that back into research here for healthcare on Earth. And understanding the differences really helps us understand how we can keep humans healthy and happy in space over longer periods of time. And that's not just Axiom that's doing that. That's every organization around the world that wants to send humans into space.
Well, and this might sound like science fiction, but are we getting to, one day will a human baby, be born in space?
I mean, it's not beyond the realms of possibility. So I know that there is a lot of organizations are looking at how humans can live and thrive in space for generations to come. That's not a huge area of research right now. There are more pressing concerns that we have to get past, like how to protect humans from radiation-induced damage, how to protect humans from those cardiovascular and those bone and those muscle changes. How do we keep humans healthy and functional when they're doing very cognitively demanding tasks in a very stressful environment with very high stakes decision making? So how can we optimize human performance through different kinds of mental training or imagery or refresher training before a task is done? There's so much research that's being done to help understand and optimize how we can perform optimally in space in future.
Lucy, so what opportunities does Axiom Space offer for academia to connect with each other in space?
Yeah, so one thing that we've recently launched that I'm tremendously excited about is the Axiom Space University Alliance. And this is what we're building as a global network of microgravity researchers, whether they're experienced researchers or wannabe researchers who want to get up there and learn more about what they can do. We're connecting this global network of researchers who want to go and do stuff in space. And what's really interesting as a challenge for that community is not just funding levels around the world, but it's also navigating the transition from the government owned infrastructure with very specific routes for access to the commercially owned infrastructure. And because Axiom works with governments, with industry, and we are a commercial entity, and we have a global network of organizations that we talk to, we're kind of uniquely positioned to help pull together the research community and say, okay, where is the low-hanging fruit in the research that you need to do? Where are the real opportunities? Where is the excitement amongst the research community that we can go and do this research? And how can Axiom enable it? How can we pull our network together to get the resources that are needed to go and make this really important research happen? But also, how can we then bring together researchers with expertise and new spacefaring nations with researchers that want to go and do stuff? How can we pull them together so that we can forge collaborations, so that we can elevate the whole research community together, so that we can connect people, we can connect ideas, we can connect organizations, and we can maybe provide recommendations to policymakers or to governments that say, hey, these are the frameworks that we need as a research community that are going to need this kind of support so that we can do research. And here's why it's important. Here's how this will change opportunities for biomedical research in this area. Here's how we will spur workforce development or industrial or economic innovation by doing this research and by working together as a global community to do this work. So one thing that has always struck me as a European now living in the US via Canada is that research knows no boundaries. Science is a global endeavor. And Axiom as a global company is really able to act as a center point to help pull people together to have the conversations about how do we do science in space? what are the opportunities, and how do we navigate this inflection point, this change from government to commercially sponsored and commercial ecosystems in space. So it's a really exciting time. It's a huge challenge, and I can't wait to get stuck into it.
Well, before we talk about your hobbies, why did you choose Axiom Space?
Because Axiom is just doing this incredible stuff. They're building a space station. They're developing the suits for the Artemis missions. So the first woman and the next man who walks on the moon are going to be in an Axiom suit. We've run 4 successful private astronaut missions, 4 Axiom missions to the International Space Station already. We've flown 12 crew from 11 nations on 4 missions. We've flown hundreds of research payloads. We're doing this stuff in space right now that is the future of what is next in low Earth orbit. We are the company that is framing and developing and building the infrastructure and also the economic ecosystem to enable humanity to flourish and to do stuff in space. I mean, you can't really turn that down when you're looking at an opportunity to do something new and interesting in science. You're going to look at the company that's really doing it and that is going to go out and change the world. So that's why I chose Axiom.
So this is a question maybe for somebody that's young that says, I want to be an astronaut, or I want to do this, and girls are less attracted to STEM subjects, or maybe that's changing. I'm not sure. So what would you say to a young girl who wants to be a scientist or who wants to be the chief scientist of Axiom Space?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the fact that you're a girl doesn't really factor into it. If you're interested in it, you go and do it. For any work in a STEM field, that you have to have a passion to do it, because you have to work hard. It's with anything that is a passion of anyone, you have to work hard, and that's no difference for any kinds of science. Nowadays, girls actually outperform boys in science and technology and engineering and maths up to some of the higher levels. And so what I would say is that I'm very encouraged by that. I see that as a change in generational attitudes, if you like. And I think the future is going to be very strong for a much more egalitarian opportunities for everyone to do any kind of science that they want. In terms of space science and in terms of the opportunities there, and for people wanting to be astronauts, I know astronauts get asked this all the time. The astronaut response is always find what you think is interesting and then work hard at that. Because space isn't just a place for pilots. It isn't just a place for engineers. I'm a biological scientist, and I certainly didn't see myself working in the space industry. But the opportunities for biological research mean that I have expertise and I have a voice that can be useful as we move forward. And so what we're seeing now in the space industry is that there is a need for people from all walks of life to be building these new economies, building this new infrastructure, the engineering and the hardware that's needed, and building these new opportunities, these research opportunities. So whether people are scientists or lawyers or policymakers or engineers or mathematicians or astrophysicists or climate change scientists, I mean, the opportunities to work in the space industry are just phenomenal. And I think it's really just the advice is to find what's interesting and then go do it.
When I did research on you, I found out that you enjoy skydiving and paragliding. So what attracts you to these gravity-defying sports?
Honestly, it's because I'm really good at falling. And I wanted to learn to fall with a bit more flair and a bit more style. The joke is that skydiving is just falling with style. But it's also about challenge for me. I love the idea of flight. Of course, I'd love to be an astronaut one day and to feel weightless. The closest I can get to it is jumping out of an airplane or flying a paragliding wing. But it's also very technical and it is very challenging, not just understanding the systems with which you're working, but it takes courage. It takes very deep courage to choose to jump out of an airplane. And honestly, it was because I like a challenge. I like doing difficult things and I like pushing myself to achieve. And I thought, if I can do skydiving and if I can jump out of a plane, I can do anything. And so I've got more than 500 jumps now, which is a lot fewer than many professionals in the skydiving industry. It's very few compared to many people. But it's been an incredible ride, and every jump I do is just beauty and freedom and pride at the end of it. When you get down, you think I did something that was really difficult, and it was really fun.
Well, Dr. Lucy Lowe, Axiom Space's newly appointed Chief Science Officer, thank you so much.
Thank you, Linda.